want to start with a poem. I want to start by asking any of you who are comfortable doing so to come a little closer. I would love to be able to see you. I want to start, and I want to end this presentation by immersing us in the medicine of poetry and music. This is a poem by D.H. Lawrence called Terra Incognita. I'm going to tell you the same thing everyone has been telling you here, but I'm going to tell you in poetry. He writes, "There are vast realms of consciousness, still undreamed of. Vast ranges of experience, like the humming of unseen harps we know nothing of within us. Oh, when we have escaped the barbed wire entanglements of our own ideas and mechanical devices, there is a rich, marvelous world of sheer, fluid beauty and fearless face-to-face awareness of now naked life. Fearless face-to-face awareness of now naked life. And me and you and other men and women and grapes and ghouls and ghosts and green moonlight and ruddy orange limbs stirring the limbo of the unknown air. And eyes so soft, softer than the space between the stars. And all things and nothing, and being and non-being alternately palpitant. When at last we escaped the barbed wire enclosure of know thyself, knowing we can never know, but only touch and wonder and ponder and make our effort and dangle in a last fine fastidious delight as the fuchsia does, dangling her reckless drop of purple after so much putting forth, and the slow mounting marvel of a little tree. When we have escaped the barbed wire entanglements of our own ideas and mechanical devices, there is a rich, fluid world of fearless, face-to-face awareness of now naked life. D.H. Lawrence wrote that poem when he was around 33 years old. It was written, say, around 1927. Was D.H. Lawrence an awakened being? The jury is definitely out about that one. But the poem itself, for me, is a portal of awakening. Whoops. Gotta hit the right button. Which is what I love about a poem, is that a poem a great poem, and a great poem for you may not be the same poem as a great poem for me. A great poem becomes a portal to something beyond me, the poem, and you. My dear friend, the day my book was published, my book is called Saved by a Poem, told me, your book has the wrong title. It should be called Slain by a Poem. So what I want to talk to you about today is about being slain by a poem. And I am going to begin with the story that was just read and also was told by many different people. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name right. Aya told it. For me, it was a poem. For her, it was microdosing LSD. But both of us started in the midst of an intractable depression. Both of us started in the midst of an intractable depression, and like her, I was so blessed to be deeply surrounded by and rooted in a community of spiritual seekers. I had always been. There wasn't a moment when I wasn't in this life seeking to discover consciousness within me. I had the most exquisite spiritual teachings around me. I had the most beautiful therapies, from Freudian to Reichian to bioenergetic to Rolfian, and I was a therapist. I was a spiritual teacher. And in the midst of all of this depression came along and took me down. And all those teachings turned to sawdust in my fingers. I wrote this poem at that time, short poem. It says, "The words that once unlocked my cage have become the bars of the next." The words that once unlocked my cage have become the bars of the next. When I'm really depressed, I clean. I think it can go one of two ways. I was cleaning under a radiator. I found this old battered cassette tape, no label on it, threw it in the cassette tape player, started doing the dishes, and this man's voice speaking poetry fills my house, speaking poetry to music. And he said, "It is not enough to know. It is not enough to follow the inward road, conversing in silence. It is not enough to stare straight ahead, to gaze at the unborn, thinking the silence belongs to you. It is not enough to hear even the tiniest edge of rain. You must go to the place where everything waits. There, when you finally rest. Even one word will do. One word or the palm of your hand turning up in a gesture of gift. And now we are truly afraid to find the great silence, asking so little. One word only. Those words cut through the layers of encrusted depression. They were like a missile. They went right into the heart of my wound, which turned out to be the heart of what was open in me. And I was slain. As Denise Levertov said, the poem leaned over and hit me on the shoulder as with a flat of a sword, and I was granted an honor and a task. It took a lot of sleuthing to figure out who the speaker was. Turns out it was a man named David Whyte. Now, many people have heard of David Whyte, and many of you have probably heard David Whyte's voice in the way that I did then, but at that point, he was just relatively unknown, at least in my world. That poem made me realize that my depression stemmed from having given up hope that language could bear spirit, which is really what the poem is about, right? Having given up hope, having completely felt failed by language, having given up hope that this whole human catastrophe here, this one that I am that knew the exquisiteness of the great silence, that knew the exquisite vastness of the unborn, could ever bring those two together. Yes, you could point at it, I could point at it, yes, I could talk about it, yes, I could go and sit in the presence of gurus, and it would be transmitted in the silence between the words. But could words carry the embodiment of spirit, the spiritualization of matter? Genesis says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. I didn't believe the Word was with God. And you and I, if you're in this room, you probably know that Genesis was wrong, that that was not the beginning. There is that which is before the beginning, that which is inside the Word, that which goes on beyond the Word. The great, what did D.H. Lawrence call it? Being and non-being, the great non-being, the unborn. And as soon as you have the Word, you have matter. And as soon as you have matter, you have a body. And as soon as you have a body, you have parents. And as soon as you have parents, you have a story. And as soon as you have a story, you have a whole catastrophe, to quote another poet, Zorba the Greek. And David Whyte, in that poem, cutting through in that moment, showed me that that whole catastrophe could come together through language. Oops. Everyone here has had that experience. Probably everyone here knows you've had that experience. Because unfortunately, a lot of times the people who say, oh, I don't understand poetry, I don't like poetry, I don't believe that I get poetry, I was that person until that moment. And honestly, about 98% of the poems that I read, I don't get. But there are our medicine poems, and those medicine poems cause openings. They cause your hairs to stand up. They cause tears to spring involuntarily from your eyes when you hear something that makes no sense. She tied you to the kitchen chair. She broke your throne. She cut your hair. And from your lips, she drew the hallelujah. So many of us carry that inside of us. Or it could be gate, gate, paragate. We didn't know what that meant the first time we said it. Baruch atah Adonai, Kyrie eleison, Nam Yoho Renge Kyo. Words can pierce us open even if we don't know what they're saying. I've had the most amazing experience of this, what words can do. How poems can enter the mind and unlock the mind. A poem can enter your body. Every poem enters your body, and it can open your body. A poem is heartbeat. It's breath. It's not just meaning. It's what I call the shamanic anatomy of a poem that enters your body and undoes the holding in your body. It changes your breath. It moves your eyes across the page at a certain rate, and that eye movement changes the chemistry of the cerebrospinal fluid in the sac that holds your brain, and your brainwave change. A poem uses language to undo language. And because I want to spend the last bit of our time together speaking more poems to music, I'm not going to get to tell you too much about how profound it has been not only to speak poems to people who are apparently on the outer conditioned level like me, but to travel all over the world, especially to Kenya, where I met these girls at this safe house for Maasai girls. And I was so shy when I met them that all I could do was speak a poem, and we fell into each other's arms, and we've been there for 10 years. I now work for them. They are my bosses. And so there's another meaning to our word universe, right? That is the theme of this, I was going to say this concert, and it really does feel like a concert. But here, another root meaning, uni, all connected, in verse, in the primordial heartbeat that connects us, even if we don't understand the language the other is speaking. There's so many stories about that, and I would be happy to tell you and riff on any of them, but for now, I want to speak poetry to you. I add music to poetry because music exacerbates what I call the shamanic components of the poem. Not always, but sometimes. Music can increase the potency of the poem, and it can decrease your mind's attachment to understanding it in a linear way. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror. And each will smile at the other's welcome and say, "Sit here, eat." You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. The time, let's say the time has come when you are meeting yourself, arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each smiles at the other's welcome and says, "Sit here, eat." You love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate emails and texts and letters. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. And it was at that age, poetry arrived in search of me. I don't know. I don't know where it came from winter or a river. I don't know how or when. No, they were not voices. They were not words or silence. But from a street I was summoned. From the branches of the night, abruptly from others, amongst violent fires. Or returning alone, there I was without a face, and it touched me. I did not know what to say. My mouth had no way with names. My eyes were blind. And something started in my soul, fever or forgotten wings. And I made my own way deciphering that fire. And suddenly I saw the heavens unfasten and open, stars, palpitating plantations, shadow perforated, riddled with arrows, fire and flowers, the winding night, the universe, and I, infinitesimal being, drunk on the great starry void, felt myself a pure part of the abyss. I wheeled with the stars. My heart broke loose on the wind. Thank you. Thank you.